Everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Guys, just before we do get into today's episode, a lot of you aren't already subscribed. We are closing in on 10,000 subscribers, so please do stop what you're doing and hit the subscribe button and hit the like button whilst you're down there as well. The bigger we get, the more interesting these podcasts will get, guests will come on, and all of the rest of it. How are you this morning, Dom?
Oh, I'm great, thank you, Dan. It's a beautiful day here in England. And I'm excited to dig into some stuff we found out over the last couple of days.
Yeah, do you want to start? Well, of course, the sort of bombshell that's been described this morning as Starmer and the UK, I suppose, recognising Palestine as a state. This has of course not gone down well with much of the opposition within British politics, but has outraged a lot of British citizens. And of course, Israel are outraged. Trump doesn't like it either. And Hamas have, of course, declared victory. Just before we do get into some of that reaction, I want to know your thoughts on Starmer and the UK recognising Palestine as a state.
Yeah, it's a really interesting political move by Starmer. It's clearly, done for the Muslim vote. I think that's his sort of spiel here. He said today to revive the hope and peace of the Palestinians and Israelis and a two-state solution, the United Kingdom formally recognises the state of Palestine. I feel like it is a bit of a spiel for that Muslim vote. He's clearly polling or wants to poll higher within the Muslim vote. And it's interesting because obviously Palestine have elected a designated terrorist organisation as their political leaders, and recognising a terrorist organisation is not going to get you far, I think, in Western politics.
Well, yeah, on the timing, Starmer choosing to announce the recognition now, right before the UN General Assembly, is this about peace or is it just about politics? I feel like you're saying there that he's just pandering towards the sort of Muslim vote. But of course, the loudest voices in the room, those sort of student unions protesting about free Palestine and all of these kind of things. But I think it does a lot more detriment to the ongoing conflict than actually going away to actually making a peace happen in that region. It's also interesting that he said it after Donald Trump left the United Kingdom, which I also find pretty interesting indeed as well.
Yeah, the timing's definitely not a coincidence there. I don't think Starmer could have actually stomached that conversation with Trump, who we know obviously supports the Israeli movement in the Middle East there. I think the embarrassment was enough during their conversations to not have this issue sort of come up.
Should we have a quick look at what Donald Trump said with regard to this after the UK, and it's not just the UK, it's also Canada and Australia that have came out and recognised Palestine as a state. Let's see what Donald Trump has said with regard to this announcement.
Is there any use at all in pressuring Israel now to come to some sort of longer-term solution?
Well, you could make the case that you're rewarding people, that, you're rewarding Hamas if you do that. And I don't think they should be rewarded. So I'm not in that camp, to be honest. We'll let you know where we are, but I am not in that camp.
Mr. President,
because if you do that, you really are rewarding Hamas. And I'm not about to do that.
So just from that 30-second segment there, Dom, he's literally using the words and terminology, you're rewarding Hamas. So essentially, where on their sort of standpoint, and a lot of other people's standpoint on the opposition in British politics, they're stating that the UK recognising Palestine as a state means that they're rewarding Hamas, and what they did on October 7th could be something as a measurement going forward, that if you do conduct such terrorist attacks, you will get what you want. Can you see that sort of motive? Can you see that sort of parallel there?
Yeah, 100%. This sort of has been in the zeitgeist for so long because of the October 7th attacks. And, I think Trump has a really good point here. They've screamed, they've shouted, they've killed, they've murdered, they slaughtered a lot of innocent Israeli people. And they've somehow been rewarded for it. Now, obviously, the tension goes a lot further than that. People would criticize Israel's response to this attack. But at the end of the day, they have gotten what they wanted, which is to be recognised as a state. So yeah, does it set a strange precedent for how you get what you want in this world? Are they saying that you can sort of commit terrorist acts and then sort of get what you want from them terrorist acts? I think it sets a truly sort of worrying precedent in the Middle East there.
Well, the follow-up has been pretty wild straight away from Hamas. As stated, they've declared victory after they, of course, have been deemed as a state now. And now Palestine has demanded reparations from the United Kingdom. Estimates go as high as £2 trillion. Now Palestine has officially been recognised as a state. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas has demanded reparations in accordance with international law based on the value of the land, which was under British rule between 1917 and 1948. I think that this is an absolute disaster, and straight away they're coming out with the sort of money buckets. And we've seen Keir Starmer, of course, give reparations before to the Chagos Islands. We've, of course, seen him pay £35 billion towards that and giving up our sort of sovereignty, giving away our land in terms of the Chagos Islands as well. Could this be the next thing that these Palestine activists are going to be trying to get done from the UK for us to pay reparations towards them? Because if you do recognise them as a state, then surely that now comes into some sort of law that they are due this now, due to the UK being able to recognise them as that.
Yeah, they're taking a page out of the old Black Lives Matter book, right? With this whole reparations argument. It's completely, it's silly because at the end of the day, we did hold that land. And then we gave it to the Israelis in 1947 or thereabouts. I just think that it's just a money spiel. And you're right, this will backfire on Starmer massively. Because we know, obviously, his history, as you mentioned, with the Chagos Islands, to sort of bend the knee to these sort of political movements. Will we actually pay £2 trillion? Which, by the way, far exceeds our annual GDP. I think that's absolutely wild. It cripple the United Kingdom.
What do you make, as I said, it's not just the UK, but it's Canada and Australia as well. But what do you think about Hamas actually now declaring victory? They see it as a thing, despite Keir Starmer coming out and saying, and Yvette Cooper coming out and saying that Hamas is a prescribed terrorist organisation. How do you feel with Hamas actually coming out and declaring victory due to this?
Yeah, I mean, look, they're telling us what they wanted with that statement, right? They're saying that they wanted to be recognised as a state, and that's exactly what we've given them, is recognition. This was the whole crux of the argument, is that are they a state or not? Obviously, most countries in the world recognise Israel as a state. But it's just interesting to see, obviously, how weak Keir Starmer is in terms of that bending the knee to Hamas. And we know how how Starmer is sort of in bed with the Palestinians, even offering NHS services for free to children that have been injured by the Israeli bombs. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm very much against bombing children, obviously. I think everyone with a pulse is against bombing children, but why are we offering our resources that are meant for British citizens to Palestinians? We don't have a responsibility to fix the world's problems. We're a tiny island, and we are incredibly overwhelmed with with our public services. And yet he's just sort of giving them out for free to foreign nationals who have no right to have these services. So yeah, I just think it's a slippery slope, and once you give them an inch, they will take a mile.
Another question on it: Does Britain even have the influence to drive peace in the Middle East anymore, or do you just feel it is a symbolic gesture with no real world impact? You said about the Muslim vote, but is that all it is from Keir Starmer's standpoint? Is this why he's doing it, or does he feel that he actually has an influence, and does he actually feel that he has an impact in the Middle East, or can drive peace by doing this? Where do you think his intentions lie? Do you think it's simply on domestic matters, or is it actually about the foreign policy?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the UK's military influence has been dwindling over the past sort of 30, 40 years. But let's be honest, it's not Palestine we would be fighting. It's their funding. It's Iran, it's Qatar, it's Iraq. It's things like that that we would be sort of, because they're funding obviously Palestine. So I don't think we have, it might be interesting to see your take, obviously being ex-military. I don't think we have the sort of military backing to make real change in the Middle East. We can only do sort of symbolic political gestures as Keir Starmer's doing. But what do you think on that point?
Well, in terms of our military, we certainly don't have the manpower nowadays anyway to do that. The numbers are dwindling. But more so on this point with regard to the impact in the Middle East, where does it leave our ties with sort of Israel? For many years, we've kind of aligned ourselves very closely with Israel. And do you think this is going to diminish a relationship with Israel? Some would see it as a good thing, others would see it as a bad thing. But do you think that this is going to scupper relationships with Israel?
Yeah, I think 100% it will. But at the end of the day, the Israeli vote in the UK is a lot less than the Muslim vote, which is why I think it is more of a political gesture rather than actually trying to elicit any change, any real change in the Middle East. Obviously, it's not good for our other allies as well. Obviously, Trump, as we saw, already come out and condemned that argument. I would definitely rather have a better relationship with the US and our sort of Anglosphere allies than I would with Israelis or Hamas.
Mm-hmm. Well, Israel's foreign ministry said, in response to the statement of the UK and some other countries regarding the recognition of a Palestinian state, Israel categorically rejects the one-sided declaration of the recognition of Palestinian state made by the United Kingdom and some other countries. This declaration does not promote peace, but on the contrary, further destabilizes the region and undermines the chances of achieving a peaceful solution in the future. Called by Hamas leaders the fruits of the October 7th massacre, the declaration not only rewards the biggest massacre of Jews since the Holocaust by a terror organization that is calling and acting for the annihilation of Israel, but also solidifies the support of Hamas enjoys. It's destructive to separate statehood on one final status issues from peace. This move goes against all logic, negotiation, and reaching a compromise between two sides, and it will push the desired peace further away. Moreover, the Palestinian Authority did not meet any of its requirements and obligations. It did not stop neither the incitement nor the pay for slay policy, nor did it take the required measures to combat terrorism, and demonstrated recently with the discovery of rockets and missiles near Ramallah last week. The Palestinian Authority is part of the problem and not part of the solution. This is also the reason why the United States imposed sanctions on the Palestinian Authority and prevented its senior officials from entering its territory. In any case, Israel will not accept any detached or imaginary text that attempts to force it to accept indefensible borders. Political gestures aimed at a domestic voting audience only harm the Middle East and are not helpful. Instead, if the countries that signed the declaration truly wish to stabilize the region, they should focus on pressuring Hamas to release the hostages and disarm immediately. So with that from the Israeli Foreign Ministry, they're simply saying that Keir Starmer has pandered towards a vote rather than trying to de-escalate tensions in the Middle East. They are saying that it's more so about domestic issues rather than foreign policy.
Yeah, I think they've sort of hit the nail on the head there a little bit. It's clearly not obviously going to elicit any real change in the Middle East. As they said, how much influence and weight does a piece of paper hold? And when it's not backed by a big military, I don't think it holds a lot. But it'd be interesting to see how our allies react to this as well and what other countries follow suit. Again, the UK is operating like it has a lot of influence in the world. And I think, obviously, historically, it has had a massive influence. I think the biggest influence in recent history. But, we have to play the hands we're dealt right now. And, can we actually afford to sort of go against our allies in the Anglosphere and obviously Israel as well when our military is the size that it is? I don't think yes is the answer to that one.
What do you make? So, lastly, on this point, what do you make of him doing a pre-recorded sort of video? Usually, he would of course come out and make a sort of emergency speech, a press conference for this, and take questions from the media. But he did a pre-recorded video where he couldn't get any scrutiny from the press, nor any questions in the Houses of Parliament.
Yeah, I don't think that's really fair from a journalist standpoint. Our elected officials need to be in positions where we can question the decisions that they make. So yeah, I think it's quite weak. I think that says a lot about Keir Starmer. It goes to show how like the sort of political discourse that Starmer is sort of stifling right now. It's the same thing on X. Just a little side point here. Sadiq Khan doesn't have replies active on his X account. Which again, in the same sort of line, I don't think that's correct. All our political figures should be able to have open discourse with them. This should have been live. We should have had, or journalists should have had the ability to ask him questions on the decision. And he's clearly quite weak on the issue because he did a pre-recording of the statement. So yeah, I think that says a lot, obviously, about Starmer and about his sort of respect there for journalists. And again, it just goes to show he's probably not that strong on the issue as well. Again, more of a political statement rather than actually inflicting any real change.
Yeah. And do you think there should have actually been a vote on this from the UK people if the UK people wanted to recognise Palestine as a state?
Dan, I think there should be a vote on everything. I think direct democracy is the way forward. When you have democracy by representation, the people you elect into Parliament are able to be, led astray. They're able to be lobbied, to have different sort of political and sort of foreign opinions pushed into UK Parliament. I think every single law should go through a public vote, which is direct democracy. It's real democracy. Democracy by representation is a fraud. We know it to be a fraud because of the state of the UK right now. We elect the Conservative movement for 14 years to decrease immigration, and at every single step of the way, immigration was increased. So, these people lie, and I do not think we can trust these people at all, no matter what party, left, right, up or down. So yeah, I do believe everything should go to a vote with the public people, and yeah, it's going to be the most representative version of democracy, having a direct vote.
Fair. Now, moving on to another subject, mate. Of course, whilst we are recording this, Reform are currently holding a press conference as they've outlined plans to ban all foreign nationals from claiming benefits. Now, Reform UK have unveiled radical new plans to shut down what calls a rip-off immigration loophole, warning it could otherwise cost the British taxpayer over £230 billion. Now, this loophole, dubbed the Boris Wave, stems from the Conservatives' 2021 new plan for immigration. It allows long-term migrants to apply for indefinite leave to remain after just 5 years. Now, indefinite leave to remain grants migrants permanent rights to live, work, study, access the NHS for free, and claim certain public funds. Now, according to Reform, around 800,000 migrants will qualify for an indefinite leave to remain between 2026 and 2030, with the total long-term cost to taxpayers estimated at £234 billion, a sum he has said is 4 times the defence budget, double the education budget, and 12 times of the police budget. Now, under Reform's new proposals, indefinite leave to remain would be abolished entirely, including retrospectively revoked for those who already have it. Welfare and social housing would be restricted exclusively to UK citizens. Now, this plan would also see hundreds of thousands stripped of settled status. So whilst they are looking to bring this in, they are also looking to strip these benefits off people that are already here and have already been granted indefinite leave to remain. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a great, obviously, policy. Why were foreign nationals allowed to get benefits in the first place? That absolutely bewilders me. I think it's obviously based in common sense here. We have a massive legal immigration problem as well. As stated, from 2021, the numbers went through the roof. A lot of people will be naturalized, will hit that 5-year sort of threshold before obviously Labour are voted out. But as you said, they're the ones that are going to be stripped, right?
Yeah, they're going to be. So some individuals will be stripped that already have that sort of, they're given this sort of indefinite leave to remain. In fact, let's hear Nigel Farage quickly say about it. I've got a video clip of Nigel Farage speaking about it, and then we can discuss it a little bit more in depth afterwards. It's under reform speech. Let's have a watch of this.
But now we're beginning to learn the truth, that simply what we've been told on this wasn't true. Far too many that have come don't work, have never worked, and never will work. The ability to bring dependents of all kinds. And when you realise that most that come are very low skilled and on very low wages, you start to get a very, very different picture. In fact, you start to get a massive benefits bill. So I want to be absolutely clear at the outset that we are here to make massive future cuts to welfare spending. I promised we'd announce this or something like this at our conference a few weeks ago. We are the party that will make massive cuts to welfare spending. And if we don't, well, what is coming down the track will best part bankrupt us, although some might say we're almost there, looking at the 30-year gilt yields this morning. Under a reform government, welfare will be for UK citizens only. It will not be for foreign-born nationals. Indeed, we'll become like most normal countries in the world. And in particular, what we're focusing on this morning is the Boris wave. The Boris wave after his huge victory in 2019, and I think the millions that came in the years of his premiership represents the greatest betrayal of democratic wishes, certainly in anyone's living memory. This is not what Brexit voters wanted, and it's certainly not what any Conservative voter wanted from 2010 onwards, where in election after election after election they were promised that net migration would come down to tens of thousands a year, and we learn it was up to, in the worst year, 1 million, although we haven't yet got the revisions. By the time they come in, it almost certainly will be over 1 million. The anticipated cost of the 800,000 plus who will qualify for indefinite leave to remain over the course of the next 3 to 4 years, the anticipated cost of this group of people is a staggering £230 billion. It is absolutely an eye-watering sum of money. We will not only say that these people do not qualify for indefinite leave to remain, we will abolish indefinite leave to remain as a category in this country.
So there you go. Yeah, so as we basically spoke about there, those plans are in place, but that's pretty huge. Now, I don't think this is necessarily that ludicrous. Now, I think this is amazing actually that they're looking to bring it in, but sometimes I'm actually thinking as to why it's not already in place anyway. Let me give you an example. If you, Dom, relocate to the UAE, right, you can be a resident in the UAE, but you'll never be a UAE citizen as such, in terms of if you even have family there and your children, right, Dom Jr., he will not be classed as a UAE citizen. He will be English and still won't get access to the benefits that a UAE citizen or someone who's born in the UAE would actually get. He would be still treated as someone who is English. And yeah, will not be able to get sort of welfare and take off their governments. So I do think this is actually really, really good. And as I said, it's something that it is good. I think it's really good. But my question to you on fairness, if someone has already been granted indefinite leave to remain under existing rules, is it fair to go back and strip that away? Or does national interest override individual expectations?
National interest has to be at the forefront of every single policy decision we make. And there was clear malice in the policies that Boris brought in to increase the wave up to 1 million legal immigrants per year. And remember, we are a sovereign nation. We decide our own rules. And we have complete jurisdiction to do whatever we want in this country. And if it is in the interest of the public, then it should be done. And something like this, I strongly, I promote, I recommend. I would even go a step further and say, you know, the people who have been granted, you know, the UK citizenship rights, we should have the ability to strip them as well. If they hold dual nationality and obviously are, you know, not working, on benefits, commit crimes, etc. You know, we should have complete jurisdiction and control of the people that come into this country and the people who are already in this country who are not performing to the level that they need to push this country forward. Again, it goes to that old saying, you know, the cream rises to the top. And we should not be deporting anyone who is a massive contributor to this society, who's integrated fairly and good. And because again, that will just hurt the sort of opportunities that we have in this country. But at the same time, you know, the majority of people that do come to this country suck it dry. That, you know, I think it was a stat that I saw, 71% of Somalian immigrants are on benefits. And they're not just keeping them benefits for themselves, they're sending that stuff back home. They are literally extracting everything from this country economically and culturally and sending it back to their homelands.
Yeah. So yeah, good. So it's a good thing, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So it is a good thing. I think it's a step in the right direction. This comes obviously at the wake of the sort of H-1B visa sort of changes that America have had as well. Well, they've changed the visa requirements to $100,000 per year for new applicants, and that will be paid for by the businesses. So if you're on a $104,000 salary, you will get $4,000 of that salary per year. You know, this is the West waking up right now. This is the cultural movement we like to see. Obviously, immigration throughout the West has been a massive issue for decades, and a step like this goes in the right direction. So, you know, I have to give reform credit where credit is due here.
Yeah, no, I think it's something that is definitely needed in this country, and you can see the widespread impact of what this is like, and immigration and people not working throughout the UK, but not just the UK, all sort of Western societies. Yeah, as I'm currently recording this, I'm sitting in Paris, and yesterday I was dumbfounded. I've obviously seen the videos, but actually seeing it up close and personal, going to certain places, and the sheer volume and the shit pit that some of these individuals that aren't clearly French are leaving the place. You know, I came out of a station the other day, and honestly, I thought I was in the middle of Somalia. And now I'm not picking on the sort of demographic as such, or a skin colour or anything like that. But my goodness me, you can clearly tell that they weren't French. None of them spoke French, and they were just sitting there begging. They were just hanging around, dealing drugs in broad daylight. And this is a symptom of what countries are getting when they just allow anybody to come in and start taking and reaping the benefits that ordinary citizens get.
Yeah, 100%. And it goes to that question, you know, does a piece of paper make you a citizen of that country? I think being part of a culture, you need to be culturally aligned, as well as obviously, you know, promote and give to that culture, and these people clearly aren't. You know, France should be made of French people, and it should be any other way with the UK as well. And being British, again, as we reiterate, it's not about skin colour, it's about cultural identity and being ideologically aligned with the direction of this country. So if they fail to integrate, then they're not part of the culture. They are a cancer in the culture. They're simply sucking up resources and you know, promoting it against the culture and the will of these people. So you're right. I've seen a lot of videos from France, from Paris specifically. It doesn't look recognizable anymore.
Yeah, apart from certain places, the sort of district I'm staying in right now is very fancy. It's a beautiful place. It's the Sixth in Paris, really, really good. But certainly, if you just move 5 minutes down the road, the whole culture, the whole place completely changes. And as I said, it's not, as you said, it's not about skin color. It's simply about the individuals not culturally aligned to the respective country that they're in, and they're certainly not. Honestly, I thought it was a small town in Somalia. Just the way, not, as I said, not about the skin color, but the way they were acting, the way that they were going about doing things. And yeah, it was just an absolute shit pit. And I think that place is called Barbes in Paris. So if you want to go see that, I'd probably recommend keeping away. But yeah, it's a shit pit. And it is the realization of what could happen. I think they're further ahead than us in terms of the sort of immigration train and the collapsing of their sort of culture. I do think is France. With the UK, we still got a bit of it, we still got some of it, but my goodness me, if you want to see what the UK will be like in sort of 5-10 years, I think things carry on, go to a place called Barbes in Paris. Shit pit. Moving away from reform, my man, you've got a little bit of a little segment that you want to talk about with regard to hope, not hate. I'm interested to hear what you've got for us.
Yeah, that's correct. So there's been a little bit of sort of news regarding hope, not hate. Now, this specifically is about a journalist. So I'll give you some context of what Hope Not Hate is. It's an advocacy group which was founded in 2004 and has sort of operated in the slipstream of Labour politics. Now, its founder, Nick Lowles, campaigned alongside Morgan McSweeney, who we know his dad makes £6 million a year off of migrant hotels in Ireland. And they campaigned in 2010 together. Now, Lowles' connection, after last year's election, Nick Lowles was invited to Number 10 to brief staffers on opinion evidence underpinning the rise of the far right, whatever that means. Now, Gurinder Joseph MP, Anna Turley MP and Sarah Owen have all held various positions within the Hope Not Hate organisation. And its latest campaign is simply called Stop Reform's UK Rise. So it's clearly a sort of political advocacy group. Now, there has been a bit of a scandal with some undercover deception. So a British journalist named Harry Schuckman posed as a wealthy philanthropist called Christopher Morton and used a fake passport to gain trust from a woman called Simone Collins. And she runs a pro-natalism charity. Essentially, the charity wants to promote higher birth rates. Now, this was part of an investigation for Hope Not Hate, and a documentary was created, and this was also referenced in his book as well. But obviously, Harry Schuckman used a fake passport, and I have a picture of that fake passport as well right here. So, obviously the legal implications of this. So, using a fake passport violates the UK's Identity Documents Act 2010. That has up to 10 years imprisonment for possession with improper intent, or 2 years without reasonable excuse. Now, the Forgery and Counterfeiting Act of 1981 means that no journalist public interest offence exists in these laws. So it doesn't matter that he is a journalist. Using a fake passport in any context is against the law. So I should talk about the police action here, or I should say inaction. So a report was made by Connor Tomlinson in October 2024 and it went unanswered. A Home Office Freedom of Information request was denied. And this is the part that sort of raised my ears a little bit. And they cited law enforcement exemptions. But I thought Harry was a bit of a journalist. So I went and had a look at some of his family history to see if I could find anything. And as it happens, his father, David Schuckman, is a 38-year BBC veteran, including covering Northern Ireland, defence, Europe, and things like world affairs as well. So, you know, I won't say with 100% certainty, but there's a high likelihood that he has connections to intelligence services. And his grandfather 100% does as well, Harold Schuckman, who was an MI6 operative during the Cold War. So the family establishments are deep into British politics, media and intelligence. So I started looking into Hope Not Hate and who funds Hope Not Hate. Now, on record, the government has funded Hope Not Hate to the tune of £66,000 in payment between 2012 and 2013. But they did stop payments in 2021. So we know for a fact that they continue to fund this up until 2021. But I also found the GLA, the Greater London Authority, which is also known as the Mayor of London, has allocated funds to Hope Not Hate for community engagement and anti-hate projects. Now, this started in 2016. Now, Dan, who was elected as mayor in 2016? There you go. So, Sadiq Khan is funding Hope Not Hate, which I think is pretty shocking. Now, I started to look deeper into the CEO, Nick Lowles, and I found some pretty shocking stuff about some of his sort of positions and some of the people that he also works with as well. So he did a speech for an organization called Hayas plus J Core, and that is the Jewish voice on refugees and racial justice. So he said, in a way, the old boundaries, the cordon sanitaire, which means separation, between the conservative movement and the fascist movement, that's gone. People move between the two. Certainly ideas move between the two. The language they're using at the extremes is going to the mainstream. So here he is categorizing all people who lay on the right or centre or right as fascists. And it's just really shocking, some of the stuff that came out with the other people who was part of this voice as well. So Naomi Di Sengji, president of the Union of Italian Jewish Communities, said this at the conference. Of course, for us Jews, we don't want to sustain a position that is we hate immigrants, we don't want immigrants, or we don't like immigrants. As Jews, we always try to highlight the humanitarian side. And she went on to say, we've supported a project of supporting refugees from Syria. So it's Muslim families that we host in Italy. It was important to give a sign and proof that as Jews, we do not discriminate and we want to live together. So, you know, the organizations that he's sort of working with are massively in favor of bringing refugees, Muslim refugees from the Middle East to countries. But as we know, you know, Sadiq Khan is of Muslim faith. So Sadiq Khan is funding a sort of a Jewish organization to bring in more Muslims into Christian countries. I see that as a sort of massively sinister cultural betrayal. You know, why do we not have any sort of say in this sort of these sort of legislation and obviously bringing refugees in? How are these people so powerful to the point where they can sort of promote people coming into this country who are ideologically unaligned with the culture? It's really shocking stuff, to be fair. And, you know, it goes to show that Hope Not Hate, who have been using forged, obviously fake passports, is funded by the government. So how did he obtain a fake passport? You know, I do believe that is due to his connection to the intelligence services. But it really just goes to show, you know, these foreign influences are influencing the culture that we live in today. And, you know, this needs to be sort of thwarted at every single opportunity.
Yeah, well, Hope Not Hate brand themselves as a neutral sort of organisation.
That's true, yeah. Obviously, the CEO...
They brand themselves as a neutral organisation, but clearly they have got one agenda and one agenda only, right? Yeah,
that's correct. You know, although they can say, you know, they're neutral, obviously their policies and what they advocate for clearly isn't neutral. It's clearly politically motivated.
Are they a charity?
They're an advocacy group.
An advocacy group. Oh, okay. So I thought they were like a charity sort of commission as such. That's what I was going to say. That
So
you can't have these sort of charity organisations having a political bias.
of course, now they are essentially sort of categorised as a charity. But it's clearly an NGO, it's a non-government organisation. It's funded by the government, but it's not the government. They just do the dirty work of the government within the sort of ideological war. And they use, they make like statements. So I read the 2023 State on Hate report, which had some really damning stuff in it as well. One of the pages was related to anti-LGBTQ+. So they criticised people on the right for campaigning against Drag Queen Our Story, which is essentially where men dress up as women and tell stories to little children. So yeah, they're obviously for that. They have a lot of outspoken positions on people like Tommy Robinson, Nigel Farage, Andrew Tate, things like that. Yet their polling suggests different from what they actually say. So, for example, with the Andrew Tate stuff, I think it was over 50% of boys found his message to be positive, and over 60% of Muslim boys found his message to be positive as well. And yet they're saying that he is obviously anti-feminist, he's a sexist, he's a rapist, things like that. They use all these keywords, this sort of identity politics to sort of misconstrue the argument, and really the whole report is just full of straw and fallacies. They purposely misrepresent our arguments and statements in order to attack the misrepresented argument, not the real argument. And this is true throughout all of their real sort of advocacy within politics as well. They use fascist group, sexist group, far-right activists. They label people who are pretty on the moderate side of the right as well as these labels, which really doesn't go far, because as we saw, this type of rhetoric causes people to be very violent towards people on the right, as we saw Charlie Kirk get murdered. And that was because people were labeling him a Nazi and far right, and basically advocating for violence, and that will radicalize more people than we think. So they're doing a lot of dirty work in the UK right now.
Yeah, no, I can see, but I don't think it's appropriate for NGOs or civil society organisations to push political leaders so publicly or be so closely aligned to them. But the way that you're making it out to be is that the political leaders are a kind of a part of it, essentially. Or at least funding it. They're on the side of this. Because an NGO, or a society or civil society organisation being so, publicly and pushing political leaders would be deemed as not appropriate at all. However, it's a guise.
Exactly, yeah, and as we've seen, it's a revolving door between hope not hate and sort of political positions, where MPs have held position within this organisation. So yeah, you're right. How can they say it's not a sort of political sort of movement party or political advocacy group when they're literally being funded by the government, and their latest movement is Stop Reform UK's Rise to Politics? So it doesn't really make any sense like that. And remember, government funded, we are funding that.
Yep, no, there has to be a lot of investigation into things like that. And the fact that they're even pushing the fact that you need to stop reform. Like, stop reform as what? Stop them from taking over in a democracy. If the people want it, then the people vote them in, then that's it. There's nothing that they can do about it, or at least in the world that we should be living in a democracy, there's nothing that anyone can do about it if the vast majority of people wanted reform into power.
100%, that is a very anti-democratic position they're holding there. You're right, if Reform do make the charge into the next election and they win, or if they lose, how much of a influence would Hope Not Hate have on that, election?
Well, we've seen in America with these sort of with the Democrat Party as well. You know, what they were trying to do to try and stop certain opposition from winning elections as well. So, I mean, it does go on, and we're certainly seeing it within our country as well.
Of course, the Democrat sort of media powerhouse was very deep. You know, all the celebrities were against Trump. All of the main institutions were against Trump. And again, this was USAID funded through NGOs to pay these celebrities to sort of say what they want and do what they want. And they had all of the media. I think it was 97% of all news stories were negative about Trump. This is just because of funding. You know, you pay someone to write a bad story, they'll write a bad story. They got to put food on the table. And the same thing is happening in the UK with this Hope Not Hate. And I'm sure there are other NGOs as well that are doing the same thing. But, you know, I just don't understand. They say the far right is more of a threat and they're scapegoating Muslims. Yet, you know, I think it was 60% of all terrorists or higher, 80% have been of Muslim faith when they do terrorist attacks. So, you know, I think the statistics are very clear there. You know, you don't have to be a genius to figure out that, you know, 6-7% of the population committing 80% of the terrorist attacks in the United Kingdom is a massive, massive issue. That's over 10 times the likelihood than the British public to do terrorist attacks. So, yeah, it just goes to show they're obviously not aligned with what's happening in the UK right now. They're just using smear tactics and identity politics to push agendas that is against the British public.
Yeah, we're just going to be pushing on to the same sort of thing that America went through. Keeping on the topic of the far left, you've got a bit on Zara Sultana, have you not?
Yes, that is correct. So, with this Zara Sultana, now it appears on the surface that she has been kicked out of your party. But she did something quite interesting as she was leaving. All the people that signed up to the party, or 200,000 signed up to an email list, were sent a link by Zara Sultana with a payment option on it. Now, the link goes to a domain that is not held by your party. So she was trying to obviously get some membership fees before she left. She was trying to siphon some money out of the party. Jeremy Corbyn sent this to all your party supporters. So this morning, an unauthorised email was sent to all yourparty.uk supporters with details of supposed membership portal hosted in a new domain name. Legal advice is being taken. The email should be ignored by all supporters, and if any direct debits have been set up, they should be immediately cancelled. The agreed protest was announced on August the 1st. The Independent Alliance group of MPs, Jeremy Corbyn, Zara Sultana, Iqbal Mohammed and Adin Hussain, Shokra Adam and Ayub Khan, are stewarding and accountable for the foundation process of the new party, leading to an inaugural democratic conference in the autumn. Now, earlier this week, we shared new details about the roadmap to launch, including our plans for mass regional assemblies and our founding conference soon. You will be able to turn your support into membership at yourparty.uk and shape the future of our party and our country. So she's been kicked out of the party, and as she's left, she sent all members an email with a payment link and tried to raise some funds for herself. Again, they've not even been had this party for 2 months, and it looks already in shambles. Are you worried about the rise of your party?
No, I was never worried about the rise of the Your Party, to be fair. I was, I mean, I could never see a world, as I said, the demographic of people that scream the loudest, however, aren't a majority, and I only think that if they would certainly be lower, way lower than the Liberal Democrats if there was ever a general election. I don't think they would get much influence at all, probably on par with a sort of Green Party, probably even smaller than them. So I was never worried about them. I was never worried about Jeremy Corbyn. But yeah, good to see that that project's gone up in flames a little bit, because yeah, you don't want to see the rise of far left parties because they're evil.
I think we have one in power right now, to be fair. And if anything, you know, your party does exist to split the vote of the left, which really will just benefit us on the right-hand side of politics.
Well, it'll be interesting to see where they go from there anyway with it. And yeah, I hate Zara Sultana. She's super uneducated. She doesn't know what she's going on about. And Jeremy Corbyn's one of those guys that I've just always heard about for a very long time. He's not giving up his pursuit of power. He never got in when he was at Labour, so I can never see a world in which he'll ever be a Prime Minister in any shape or form. So yeah, I mean, if anyone ever votes for them, they're just absolutely brain dead and idiots. But speaking about far left terrorism as such, Charlie Kirk's memorial was yesterday. Did you see some of the scenes?
Yes, I've seen a few clips and videos from there. I saw his wife make a speech. You know, she wears...
we're gonna get
after you.
Go on, sorry. You go on.
Yeah, I was just going to mention she wears the chain around her neck that Charlie Kirk was wearing when he got shot, which was still sort of covered in his blood. So I think, you know, she's an incredibly strong woman. You know, she had the love of her life taken from her, the father of her 2 children, and even still, you know, she came out and publicly said that she forgives the attacker, which I think is a massive testament to sort of who she is as a person and aligning with her sort of faith. You know, she said that Jesus did the same thing. Jesus died for our sins, and she sees it in the same light, which I think is very recommendable.
Well, I want to share a bit of footage from the event as well. I've got a couple of good pieces, as you said there, her forgiving the attacker, which we'll get to momentarily. But this was a message from 2021 from Charlie Kirk, by the way. I've got an image on the screen now. And he said in a chat, "This is my vision." So that sort of same arena as where the memorial was, sort of sold out, and that was his vision, of course, going forward for his movement. And it probably not in the best of circumstances, that vision came true, essentially. I'm sure he would, of course, wanted to be there for that vision. However, I've got some moments, of course, from it. Under the sort of speech compilation, we've got, of course, J.D. Vance speaking, Donald Trump, of course, having that moment with Erika, and we've got some other speakers, Elon Musk speaking about stuff, and then, of course, a brilliant spine-tingling moment of where the whole arena sings. But yeah, let's just have a little watch of this quickly.
Why was he killed?
He was killed because his words made a difference. Because he was showing people the light. And he was killed by the dark.
Thank you, sir.
A little uncomfortable talking about my faith in public as much as I loved the Lord and as much as it was an important part of my life. I have talked more about Jesus Christ in the past 2 weeks than I have my entire time in public life. And that is an undeniable legacy of the great Charlie Kirk. You know, he loved God. And because he loved God, he wanted to understand God's creation and the men and women made in his image. Now, much has been said over the last week about Charlie's ability to approach any topic.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much, and good luck. God be with you. Thank you.
That young man. On the cross, our Savior said, "Father, forgive them, for they not know what they do." That man, that young man, I forgive him. I forgive him because it was what Christ did and is what Charlie would do. The answer to hate is not hate. The answer we know from the gospel is love, and always love. Love for our enemies and love for those who persecute us. To all the men watching around the world, accept Charlie's challenge and embrace true manhood. Be strong and courageous for your families. Love your wives and lead them. Love your children and protect them. Be the spiritual head of your home. But please be a leader worth following. Your wife is not your servant. Your wife is not your employee. Your wife is not your slave. She is your helper. You are not rivals. You are one flesh working together for the glory of God.
I know it's not much, but nothing else. One more time. So I throw up my head, praise you again and again. All that I have is a hallelujah, hallelujah. And I know it's not.
Wow.
Yeah. What did you think of? So that's just some of the clips. Of course, it went on for a very, very long time. Donald Trump's speech was around sort of 45 minutes or so. But of course, a guy that will always be remembered. And I certainly felt that what Erika's message to men was about is something that is really powerful and something that I'll take personally into my life. I kind of live my life by those values anyway, but certainly if there's other men watching, then those sort of values will keep you on the straight path. Really will.
Yeah, I think it resonated quite deeply with me as well. It's a direct call to action. We need to make sure that the legacy that Charlie created is sustained, and not only sustained but push forward. He was the only person to go out and have civil debates with people that he disagreed with, or one of the biggest voices in that space. No one did it like he did. Absolutely, cultural icon, one of the best, and also very moderate as well. Saw sides from both angles, wanted to get as many different perspectives and opinions as possible. And yeah, he was killed, as Elon said, he was showing the light and he was killed by the dark.
Facts. Yeah, rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. More on from that, there was a big talking point, of course, from the memorial itself. There was a video, of course, Donald Trump and Elon Musk speaking together. Lip readers essentially said that they were wanting to maybe work together going forward. And I've got a video here, firstly, actually, of Charlie Kirk speaking about what he thinks Trump and Musk will do. He thought that they would reconcile, and as you can see the moment, of course, the pair are talking. Have a watch of this.
Yeah, it's been hard to watch today and unfortunate in some regards. And I love your take, which is both of these men deserve great credit for their contributions to help save civilization. Elon Musk bought Twitter, which of course became X a couple years ago, which liberated speech. And then, of course, President Trump built the most amazing political movement we've ever seen. He was shot, almost shot again. He was impeached twice. He was facing 700 years in federal prison. And he was so clear about not surrendering and not backing down and not giving up. I will say it's a tough thing to watch, this public feud. I actually think they're going to reconcile at some point, though, because deep down, I would like to believe they both want the same thing.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's true. I've seen a lot of people on the right sort of put aside their differences and unite against the radicalization of people on the left. And I think that's what Charlie wanted. I do believe in the wake of his death, that is what will happen. The right, rather than sort of infighting and focusing on sort of semantic issues, we can reconcile differences, put differences aside and sort of work together for the greater good, to defeat the sort of left woke sort of ideology, the virus on society as it is today. And I really hope they do get together. We're talking about the two most powerful men in the country and arguably a top sort of 5 in the world here. Elon started a massive political change in discourse with buying X. And Trump started the biggest political movement really in American history. So having these two people not on the same team just doesn't benefit anyone. Obviously, the massive feud was in regard to the annual deficit being increased by $5 trillion, which was directly against what Elon wanted. He wanted to decrease the deficit and obviously used his initiative Doge to complete that, saving nearly $250 billion in the process. But, it's just a drop in an ocean when compared to $5 trillion of increased debt for the US people. And again, it won't be them paying it, it'll be the future generations. But, I still think ideologically they are very aligned. It's just obviously the initiative that Elon did sacrificed a lot of time, obviously had a lot of sort of terror attacks on his car dealerships as well, and backlash from the people. So he did suffer a lot to make that happen. But I think this will be a good thing. I think this will go sort of to the benefit of the people, and hopefully they can reconcile properly and put their differences aside.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope that can be definitely the case going forward. I wanted to bring up another story quickly on ISIS. You remember ISIS?
I do remember ISIS.
Well, apparently, according to reports, Britain could be at risk of a fresh wave of terrorism if control of ISIS detention camps in Syria change hands. Yeah, since the collapse of the so-called caliphate in 2019, the Kurdish-led Syrian Defense Force has held around 35,000 captured ISIS fighters, including more than 8,000 foreign jihadists. Among them is Shamana Begum, obviously that girl famously trying to get back to the UK. Now, most of those have been kept in vast detention sites. Al-Hol, which holds over 32,000 Syrians and Iraqis linked to ISIS, and Al-Roj, home to thousands of foreign fighters and their families. These camps are located in Kurdish-controlled northeast of Syria, an area supported by US troops and Western funding, including Britain's. However, there are fears mounting as rival faction Hayat Tal-Asham, led by former Al-Qaeda commander Abu Mohammed al-Jalani, pushes for control. Now, fighters loyal to HTS have already been spotted displaying ISIS symbols and carrying atrocities against Syria's minority Christian, Alawati and Druze communities. Camps officials warn that if HTS were to seize control, ISIS could be reborn within 24 hours, with thousands of terrorists once again unleashed across the region and beyond. Now, the SDF insists it is the only force capable of keeping ISIS contained, both militarily and ideologically, but they admit they have received no guarantees about the camp's future. Now, this warning coming from them is pretty stark. If Kurdish forces lose control very soon, the West could face a new flood of ISIS terrorism, and Britain may once again be in the crosshairs. A question with regard to this: do we in Britain have a responsibility to support the Kurds in keeping those camps under control, given they fought alongside us against ISIS, or should we stay out of it completely, despite this organisation maybe potentially being able to take over the region and these 35,000 ISIS jihadists in detention being released? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think from a British first perspective, this is only a threat to our nation if these people can get here. And clearly they have a route to get here through the sort of illegal human trafficking scandal that is the channel crossing there. In terms of backing the Kurdish forces, look, you know, you can only keep these people, you can only inflict your sort of power and will on a country for so long. If the people do get out, again, the only threat will be if they manage to get into this country. From a British first perspective,
which there is a route.
Exactly. So from a British first perspective, I don't think we should be getting involved in this if we have strong borders. I don't think this really affects us. And again, we can't.
But we don't.
We don't, exactly. So maybe we should, but again, it goes to that point. You know, if we have strong borders, we don't have to get involved in all these foreign wars, which again, funded by taxpayers, increases the deficit, increases the interest payments on that deficit as well. It's just not something we can really afford right now. Obviously, I'd rather have people who are part of ISIS in jail than not. But again, it just goes to show our sort of embarrassment of our border system means that this could potentially be a threat to UK citizens.
Yeah, so, I mean, if it was the case that these ISIS terrorists were released, do you then believe that, would you be fearful? It's 35,000 were released. Would you then be fearful due to our current state of our borders? Would you be then fearful what could actually happen on the UK streets due to there being such an easy route back into the country?
Yeah, 100%. I even think terrorists have come over on boats already and are sort of being sleeper cells in these hotels. Now, if you have an extra 35,000 to that number, and the first place they are going to come is Europe, they're going to obviously try and get payback for the Afghanistan and Syria wars. I know if I was in their position, that's exactly what I would do. I would complete martyr obligations and make sure that people suffer. And you know, how can we have a sort of conscience letting random people into this country when we know that if this does happen and they do gain control of this area, all these people could be potentially massive threats to the UK population. So yeah, this just goes back to the disaster border policy that we have currently. We cannot be allowing these people asylum. We can't be allowing anyone asylum at all. I don't think asylum is the right protocol in any scenario, and we need to have much stronger border policies.
Yeah, well, this is something that this is a detriment for not having secure borders. That if something like this does happen, then of course we are, as a country, are going to be in a massive harm's way with regard to it. Dom, running out of time a little bit. What have you got anything final to give us, or?
No, that was it. Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you guys for the support. The support has been incredible. If you've not already subscribed, make sure you hit that button down below. Trying to get to 10k as fast as possible. And yeah, we'll see you guys next time.
Take care, guys. Peace.